Go on then, Ryan. You go on then.
Oh,
Are you going to do it?
no. I thought you were gonna leave me a note there. So,
No.
yeah,
You are watching or listening to
yeah.
Strange.
You are watching or listening to Strangers in Space. And for the next hour or so, we're going to make the supreme sacrifice of talking about the last episode of the War Between the Land and the Sea, so you don't have to.
Honestly, got to try and make it more natural and flowing than that.
I was trying to be Shakespearean because you always do it so naturally. I was trying to give you some variant. Sorry.
No. Right. So
So,
are you carrying on the conversation from this point, or are you handing back over?
oh no, I'm only co-host. Okay, I don't want to take over the show. It's okay.
I mean, for the sake
Oh,
of anybody listening or anybody watching, I've accidentally given Ryan the host background as opposed to the co-host background, and so he's got the same colours as me, and that's why he is trying to steal this podcast away from me.
It's going to make an
that's
excellent
about
joke on the audio.
Well, that's why I've explained it in
I know.
words.
I know.
Ryan, you've not been on either of these so far. So, in a
We haven't
nutshell,
introduced ourselves yet.
Hi, I'm Matt.
hi, I'm JR.
Do you want to go next, Ryan, or do you want me to?
well, I don't know. As the host, I don't know if I should. No, you've got to go next. It's Jay. It's the alphabet. It's the alphabet.
Well,
Look, if this
Matt
is
went first, and he's on the
if,
album.
God, what
if this is
what a
listen,
disaster.
if this is
Honestly.
going to be my podcast, as the audience has been crying out for, we're going to have some changes around here. Okay, so God damn it, start again and do it in alphabetical order, or you're off the show. Go. I have spoken.
Hi, I'm JR.
Hi, I'm John.
Matt?
Hi, I'm Ryan. Brackets
Yeah.
co-host. So yeah, no, I haven't been on any of these before. Um,
This is
uh,
terrible. People will be watching this. Not many, but some. They'll be
This is
watching this.
this is what happens when you put him in the ranks. This is why we make him run the whole thing.
What did you
oh yeah.
think? What did you think, in a nutshell, after week one when you'd just seen the first two episodes?
Um, the first week I thought, okay, this is interesting, but it's well filmed. I mean, the production value seemed to be a lot higher than the last series of Doctor Who. Was my sort of first reaction. Um, I felt a little bit Babylon 5y to an extent, uh, but the thing that I really thought was it really seems like an upscale retread of every Silurian story we've ever had. I know they're not called the Silurians in this. I understand that, but close enough for disco. I just had the feeling that they're going to tell the exact same story they've said before. It's almost going to be something happens, and then the Silurians go back to sleep again, or whatever. And I'm not gonna. I don't want to jump ahead to the spoilers. But
I
that's
don't
what I
think
felt.
anybody's watching this before they watch the episode.
Fair enough. Then I was 100% correct, unfortunately, and it was the exact same story with a little bit of Romeo and Juliet and a little bit of Splash thrown in at the end.
This is
And
great.
then a great
So
big genocide.
I liked it for the reasons Ryan didn't like it, so this is going to be fun. Did you think the Babylon 5ness was basically the makeup and the creature?
partly the makeup because she walked straight off of a season one episode of Babylon
Yeah.
5. I mean, almost exactly, but also the formal diplomacy elements,
Yeah, the
which
diplomacy is the Babylon 5 thing, isn't it? Yeah.
that's the thematic Babylon 5. But Matt is 100% on the money. There is a character in the first season of Babylon 5 who I think might have been in season 2 a little bit as well, but who disappears. But she looks so similar.
Okay.
It is slightly
She's
better
the one who
makeup, granted.
flirts with the captain of the base.
Are you on about Delenn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
Delenn.
This is
Oh,
no. This is someone from the League of Non-Aligned Worlds. This is a
Oh,
very
okay.
small part. Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
be
oh,
hardcore
okay.
B5 to spot that. But yes, and but the other question that came up for me was that also came up from Babylon 5 for different reasons was
Okay, this
how
was
on
supposed to
earth.
be the nutshell bit before we talk about tonight's episode.
Oh, I just want to get because
It's
this will be the
still
only time.
quicker than you are, JR.
Can we have some order, please? Honestly, um, I
He's not
just
even been on the podcast for the last 2 months.
I know I've been storing all this up. This is pent up Strangers in Space coming out now. I'm trying to figure out the logistics of how the two of them perform the deed. I don't know
Oh,
if anyone
okay.
else has thought about that, but that threw me. That completely threw me. That wasn't the main question I was thinking of this episode, but just it really. I was just thinking, how the heck does that work? But anyway,
Do you remember
um,
the paving stone bit in Love and Monsters?
yeah, I do, I do. What you say that Homo acra are somehow pavement related in?
I
Well,
don't know.
it
They
always
both
comes to mind
spend a
when.
lot of time underwater, right?
Well, yeah, you raise a fair point. So, but yes,
And
that was what I
so
thought.
did Russell Tovey, apparently.
So that's what I thought, and like I said, the obverse of some other people here, that the ending was very well executed. I felt, but I also felt like I saw it coming a mile off. What did you guys
The
think?
ending of episode 2.
No,
Or
the ending full stop. But the ending of
Oh,
episode
we've not
two,
even got to that yet. You're
You
reviewing episode
you
5
did
before we've...
Is it?
no no
Yeah,
no. In Ryan's defense, you told him that he could feel free to talk about the ending
yeah.
because he was worried about spoilers, and you said no, you can't spoil anything.
well, anyway,
Stop
so
undermining the host, JR. That's Matt's job.
Yeah.
um, anyway, one thing I do want to say is this: it seemed like, and again, sort of jumping ahead, there's the ending kept getting repeated. At one point, two people jump in the water and escape. Then one person jumps in the water and escape, and then same thing happens again. Which I thought was a bit lacking in creativity. But anyway, pray
That was the
continue.
thing that you thought was lacking in creativity.
Well, no, stood out to me because I watched these in chunks, and it was like, oh, they've done that. Oh, they've done that. Oh, they've done that. So,
Did
and I
so
teach Romeo and Juliet, so I saw a lot of that in it.
episodes 3 and 4, did that go up from episodes 1 and 2 or down from episodes 1 and 2? Or just
Ooh.
or did it stay on the same level?
I'm gonna. Everyone is gonna cringe when I say this, but I mean this in the literal sense of the literal figurative sense of it very much trod water for me.
Well, I made a joke about wading today that had nothing to do with this, but was equally as cheesy and corny and yeah. So I'll forgive you for it.
The,
Uh,
the male
Okay.
centre must be a riot of laughter and fun during this time of year. With you bringing your comedy A game to work.
honestly, okay, I'm going to start singing songs in a minute, so you're going to have to
God,
distract me.
someone help us.
You've never heard them, you don't know.
Which songs though? I don't see. I don't know.
Oh no, not songs by other people, songs that I've made up.
Oh, yeah, it's fine. Go for it.
Oh, now I want to hear them.
At least you'd be in the right key.
There's a few of them.
I may be, I may not be. Maybe I'll sing at the end. That people are going to expect this now. It's not going to happen.
You occasionally modestly accidentally let them escape onto shared threads.
Oh no, not stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
No, this is a completely different thing. Right, let's get to episode 5. I, th I think for the rest of, well, I think for all 4 of us, then, to be honest, we didn't see any improvement in the middle episodes, if even that we thought they were as good as the first 2. In other words, I think all of us had pretty much lowered our expectations before episode 5, I guess. I don't think any of us really had very high hopes for it, apart from maybe Matt. So, okay, I'll go to Matt. What did you think of episode
Well,
5?
I had high expectations in the first 2 episodes. They lowered slightly for the second 2 episodes. Um, I'm kind of ambivalent about the ending. There are bits that I quite liked. I quite liked the fact that he cherry picked from Warriors of the Deep and the Sea Devils and the Silurians, but gave kind of more expansive tweaks to it, and he did it on a sort of more global scale. So he kind of took it out of Studio B television center and just sort of ran with it a little bit. So I quite like the fact that he's kind of retelling a lot of these things, but for a modern audience, for a big scale, for an HD audience, should we say,
It
or
was
4K
episode
audience.
5 of the Silurians inverted, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I kind of appreciated that. I liked the fact that the ending wasn't as grim. I was sort of obviously expecting Russell Tovey to grow gills because he kept scratching at his neck and
Yeah.
And I
And
kind of
eventually,
like,
his first line in the entire episode is, "I've
yeah,
got a rash on my neck,
yes, and then he doesn't feel very well in the air.
and I keep
And
being drawn towards the water."
for me, that was quite a sort of romantic kind of ending. It wasn't a Romeo and Juliet. It was a positive ending where they actually got to end up together.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's still the kind of
Splash.
the nihilism and cynicism of RTD, um,
Lots of shots
which
of dead sea
which was the
devils in the
which was the
water.
predictable thing. So that was, I liked the spectacle, but that was the bit that I found predictable. But at the same time, it was clear from episodes 3 and 4 that he was kind of closing doors for the concluding episode and running out of time for his concluding episode. So predictable was expected. So for a predictable ending, I found it uh, fairly acceptable.
For me, I just didn't feel like anybody got a handle on telling a story. So they talk about Severance, and then they talk a little bit more about Severance, and then you forget about Severance, and then somebody brings Severance back up, and then somebody says the word Severance is everywhere, and nobody will admit to it, and nobody knows what it is, and you don't get, you know, that bit from All the President's Men where somebody goes off and investigates it and finds out what Severance is. Everybody just says there's this thing called Severance, but nobody seems to be interested in what it is. And then you don't get to see a sea devil infected. You don't get to see. So it's an inversion of episode 5 of the Silurians. But in episode 5 of the Silurians, you get to see the infection spread. Here, you don't get to see the infection being started, let alone spreading. You just see the ultimate effect of it. It just felt so, and I understand why, because they're telling this story from the human being's point of view. But as a storytelling device, you just went from initiation to result without execution in between. And as a storytelling device, it just left me utterly cold. Ryan, what did you think of episode 5?
Um, Again, I didn't have the highest expectations. And to be honest, I like you said, it was kind of written into a bit of a cul-de-sac because Doctor Who is very fond of the reset button for humans, and so the brave thing I think would have been they actually make peace, and you have Solarians as part of everyday life in ongoing Doctor Who. But he didn't do that. Obviously, there's a deck clearing exercise. The Silurians go away again. They're defeated in a very underhanded way that reminded me of reminded me of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And the humans are bad narrative gets played out again. And I thought it's a bit same old, same old. I didn't think I was hoping for something to happen, like one thing. That the only thing about this now, and I don't know if this is really that valid or not, but the only thing I liked about this was one, the Homo aquas. Oh, by the way, does anyone why is it Homo aqua rather than Silurians or Sea Devils or anything else like that? Is there any has any stated reason been given for why they've
What
given them
in universe? It's because that one general liked it. That's what he said. He
okay,
said it
fair.
shouldn't be Horakwa,
And
but I
also,
like
Right,
it.
okay.
so, and one of the Sea Devils says we're translating everything anyway, so that's as good a translation as any
Right.
other. So we'll stick
Okay,
with
that's
that.
true. So so two things that I liked, one of which is a little bit of a cop out, and one of which I think probably won't be followed up on. But I like the fact that the Silurians, Homo aqua, whatever, they don't go back to sleep. So they are still actively out there, whether they've gone away or not, which again might be a cop out because they're still not front and present anymore. They're not a clear and present danger
They're
anymore.
all in that trench, which means the program can bring them back if it wants to.
Yeah, which is still slightly better than they've gone back to sleep. Um, the other thing I really liked was, and this is contingent on whether it's followed up, is the fact that we have Kate Lethbridge Stewart, I think, possibly having, I don't know if it's a full mental breakdown or a momentary existential crisis or what, but she goes dark at the end. She points a gun. We're doing spoilers, aren't we? Yeah. She points a gun at a litter bug. Okay.
Good for
Now
her.
it's an extreme response, and it's not a rational response, but it's framed in the events that have just happened. Now, that's not healthy, mentally healthy behavior. Okay, I think anyone can recognize that. So if that's followed up on in the next series of Doctor Who, where having
Come on, what next series of Doctor Who?
okay, well, it could be a very dark Christmas special if she's in it. Let's just put it that way. But I'm just saying that if that is followed up on, if that's actual character growth, then at least there's something that I
Do you
can
know what
sort of
that
stick my teeth in.
post-credit scene is? That's Russell T Davies writing episode 5, producing episode 5, recording episode 5, editing episode 5, and then going back and rewatching episode 4 and thinking, shit, Pete put in all this stuff about Kate, didn't he? Having a breakdown. I better do something with that.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of my fear, but anyway, I liked it. It was a consequence to this, other than like two people swimming off together, and the status quo being re-established again. And we know corporations are evil. We know they do. He's not telling us anything new or clever. And we've had that Severance thing, which again is bad wolf, spelt differently, essentially. That's supposed to be replete with meaning, but really isn't anything. It's just no matter what the governments or anyone good trying to do is this, they're outmaneuvered and outnumbered by these corporations who commit genocide. So yeah, I was sort of very let down by the ending, except for those two potential elements which could be somewhat redemptive in the future. I know I'm an optimist, okay? I'm an optimist, I know.
I'll
But
say.
it was interesting on the screen at least. That they
Did
can't take away
anybody
from me.
did anybody listen to this week's Radio Free Scaro? The review of episodes 3 and 4.
Not
Right, I'm gonna
Were they positive?
No, it was
Oh.
something that they brought up that I hadn't realised that I think is very telling when it comes to how the series works. I'll ask John what he thinks, and then I'll bring this up and see what you make of it. John.
I think it revealed the point of the whole exercise. It's the same thing as Children of Earth, where they're finding a reason to tell this story in the Doctor universe, but the Doctor isn't there. And it's basically the point is that Silurians episode, but without the Doctor. So for that, it did kind of work, but it's also because Russell James writes the Doctor as a hero figure. Again, it ends up with a nihilistic thing that emphasizes the worst of humanity in a way that's kind of interesting, because the Sea Devils have threatened humanity in episode 2. But ultimately, I think it just did kind of plod towards that logical conclusion. And it probably needed some kind of big set piece to liven it up somewhere along, just kind of gin things up a little.
Do you think David Tennant's 14th Doctor is doing a Donna Noble, where he's just kind of basically turned the internet off and turned the telly off and just doesn't watch the news, and he's completely unaware that this is happening? What do you think he thinks when all that plastic starts raining down from the
I think
skies?
he's got his box sets off. Box sets on, doesn't care. So whatever.
I think he was just sitting down thinking, where's Torchwood? They'll take care of it. Torchwood will take care of it. They're competent.
I don't have a problem. So I know there was lines in this sort of saying the Doctor can't get involved because some things the humanity has to. I don't care about. I don't see this as a Doctor Who spin-off. I know it is the Doctor Who spin-off in the Doctor Who universe, but I've never watched this or Children of Earth thinking, I wonder where the Doctor is. I just think,
well, it's explicitly addressed in both, so
yeah, but I don't need that. Is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Which is
why
addressing it,
flipping a mental switch that just says this is, in production terms, a Doctor Who spin-off, but in reality, this is just Doctor Who where the Doctor doesn't actually exist.
It's kind of banished thinking, isn't it? Applied to TV making.
Yeah. But that's why I think it's a problem that you keep talking about the Doctor in it. I think if you didn't mention the Doctor, you'd just get away with it. It would just be a story. But the fact that you've got to keep bringing the Doctor up. Well, they talk about him in 3, if not 4 of the episodes.
They're brief moments. They're not like, not like wanging on about it.
It's every week.
Okay. Well, it was.
Is that though to make the fans remember it's a Doctor Who spin-off? Because it's called The War Between the Land and the Sea. It's not called Doctor Who: The Land Between the War and the Sea. Star Trek had the same thing with Enterprise. For 3 seasons, it was just called Enterprise, and then they realised no, people might be overlooking it. We need to call it Star Trek Enterprise. People recognise it, so it could be something as crass and basic
I
as
think
that.
it's just RTD wants to be a kind of populist and wants to appeal to as many people as possible, and he knows that there will be fans out there who are saying, "Yeah, but why is the Doctor not turning up?" Rather than just
Yeah,
thinking, "Well, it's because it's a spin-off," and the Doctor's
yeah,
like,
I don't
but
think
it's woolly
so because
thinking,
it's
though, isn't
already
it?
got Sea Devils in it. So if you're a Doctor Who fan, you're watching it regardless, right?
But they're not. But they're not recognisable though as Sea Devils. I mean,
But
in
they are
fairness, they
Sea
don't look.
Devils.
But they are. The thing is, though, it's woolly thinking. It's like you said. I mean, what do you do every the other 364 days of the year, kind of a thing? They must be doing stuff like this. And if you get into the weeds of it, it's like, well, where are Torchwood? Where's Captain? No, what's
Torchwood
his name?
dead generally.
Torchwood. Yeah, if it's and what's the guy's name? Not Captain Mysterio. So what's his name? The superhero,
Doctor
the
Mysterio.
Ghost. The
The Ghost,
Ghost.
yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the
Oh yeah,
Ghost.
yeah.
Where's the Ghost? He probably could have solved this single handedly. There's all that nonsense in any shared universe that you have to hand wave and overlook. Unfortunately, this kind of wants to keep one foot in one area and one foot in the other by having the Doctor mentioned. And of course it's Unit, so he works for Unit, so there is that. But yeah, it's a constant pain in the bum for like the hardcore fans who are thinking, where is he, or where's X, Y, and Z, and everyone else the wider audience they're trying to bring in, who potentially could even be going, Doctor Who, no pun intended. Like, which Doctor are you talking about?
Yeah. Does anybody know why? Because it's a unit thing, and Kate Lethbridge Stewart in the end is like, I don't know whether she's actually third billing, but she's basically third billing in the cast in importance in the program. Does anybody know why it's being a unit thing and so strongly a unit thing? About half the unit characters are missing. Is it because the actors were busy? Is it because they just didn't want to have them in it? I know Russell T Davies has said this thing about. Do we know this? The reason why it's not set in Unit Tower? He
No.
said Russell T
Well,
No, I
Davies.
looked.
Russell T Davies said that set would look silly in a serious program, so we had to
"Oh,
ditch it and get a new one.
I can see." So the Splink, was it Splink or Bug
Blinks.
Clicks? Yeah, Splinks. I can see why that didn't appear in this series because it's a different tone. So
But
by
yeah, but
extension, that set's built around that robot. So therefore, it makes sense to set it in a more sort of Christopher Nolan kind of, grounded
yeah, but
place
they've gone to
rather
a
than Avengers
great
Tower.
expense to build a new set. They could just have taken the Flinks out of the old
Well,
I
one.
was just thinking that.
given
Yeah, just take the flinks
given
out.
some credit, it was only a year ago we were claiming that everything was filmed in the same car park in the same set. I'm quite pleased that actually they're taking them out of the set. I was expecting them to reuse that set in every episode. I was quite pleased not to see it because at
Yes,
least it
okay,
felt
being
different and it
but
suited the
being
tone of the series.
pleased not to see it is one thing, but what is the explanation for why it happens? And why have they gone to that expense?
Again, it's like not having the doctrine. I didn't ask the question,
Well, I'm
why is
asking it
unit
now.
more mobile in other parts of London? It actually is more realistic to me that unit
oh,
operates in different
yeah.
places.
Also, it's a long way to get up a tower for a Sea Devil, isn't it?
Yeah,
But it's the same
and there
place as
isn't.
London.
I mean, you
Both
could
of
still have
the
the unit tower as a separate thing of this is where they go to do their work, and then they come to the other place to do the diplomacy. You
Yeah.
could still have that. I think you're right because it is, but I assume it's the place where all their best tech is and all of their positions are. So it makes total sense that the world's on a war footing. Where do you go? Churchill went to the bunker where all the stuff was. Unit should logically go to their tower where they've got access to everything, they can do everything and be defended.
and
So
that tower is in London, where this story's taking
exactly.
place.
And well, they're not going to want the entire world's military getting into Unit HQ, are they?
But do they have to?
Well, no,
I
no,
mean,
no.
surely
But the
there's
Yeah, 'cause you've
meeting,
got that
stuff
the
around.
secret-
It's a
diplomacy
bit of
Yeah.
doesn't
a,
take place in the
quite frankly, it's
headquarters.
a bit of a boring way of criticizing
Yeah.
the series. Is why don't they use the tower?
Well, I don't know. Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
they went to an emergency bunker in times of war. Maybe it is an act of war. So it's like Churchill not being based out of number 10 Downing Street. He's based in the cabinet war rooms, which are also in London. So but I
Unit
don't.
Tower is the emergency bunker, surely. It's
I
the one with
neither
all the
know
Well,
nor
weapons.
care about it, but
Well,
there
you
are
might not care
explanations.
about it, Matt,
Yeah,
but it's
but
a
there
conversation.
are explanations if you wish to like
Well, no, there
apply
aren't. There are
imagination to them.
spurious. It's the bunker. That's
The tower
Does
isn't a
anyone actually
bunker.
care?
Maybe there's an
It's
even
so
more
true.
secure bunker. Well, this is my point.
I'm
well,
pointing out.
Yes.
The important thing is not that they are in a different set. The important thing is that Russell T Davies decided that the Doctor Who set was too silly for a serious program and
Yeah.
decided to
yeah.
go to great expense to build new sets instead when those sets are already standing and were there ready to be used for reasons that feel pretty
Well,
spurious
I mean,
and superficial.
I kind of agree with Russell T Davies. I think it didn't meet the tone of the series. The tone of the series, it does feel like the difference between the Avengers and the Dark Knight, for instance. So this felt like more of a sort of a Nolan take on the Doctor Who, the Doctor Who that Russell T Davies has been writing, and the Splinks and that set in
Blinks.
the
Links.
whatever that
But you can
set
take the thing.
in general felt more Shooty Gatwa series than it felt War Between the Land and the Sea.
Well, you can take
That
the blinks
contradicts this
out and
whole.
turn the
Well,
lights down a bit.
you
I mean,
could
it's just a
Yeah,
bunch of desks.
I'm pretty sure also that they wouldn't have like spaffed a load of money for no reason. This is one thing that we do know that production companies don't tend to do.
They
then
spaffed
what's
a
the?
shed load of money on that TARDIS set for no very good reason. They
Yeah,
didn't
I mean,
put it in
what's
the series very much. They even put a fucking wheelchair ramp up there and
Yeah, you say
refused to
that
let the person in the wheelchair go up it.
every time we talk about Doctor Who.
Oh, has everyone
No,
got
we
the deal
don't
bingo
bring that
card?
up every time we
Yeah,
talk
you
about
do.
Doctor Who.
I've
That's
got
about
my.
the third time it's ever come up.
Come on, Joe. Only a couple more things. I've got my bingo card for.
Oh
it's
no,
but what's the
seriously, that does not come up very often.
It
what
really
I
does.
just wonder
It
what's the
does.
point of establishing it and rebranding as a home universe if the parts of your universe don't work together? Now, I'm not saying you should do Torchwood style stories in Sarah Jane Adventures, obviously, but at the same time, if it's supposed to be of a place where you could conceivably have Kate Lethbridge Stewart walk onto the TARDIS and then go to the tower and do her job there, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me that you can't at least have enough, creativity so that you can use the unit tower and just make it here's the unit tower in like serious mode, if you like, because we are dealing with
I
aliens from
mean,
the bottom of the ocean still here. So it's not like
there's an interesting point buried in that, but that's the Torchwood question: is how do you reconcile the tone of Torchwood with Doctor Who and Sarah Jane? And is it worth you don't, but then you mash them together for one episode of Doctor Who, and it feels a little bit weird.
See, in the
But yeah,
Marvel
I think
universe,
there's a legitimate kind of does this feel like a Doctor Who spin-off, or does it feel like they've kind of tried to retreat as much as possible from Doctor Who to create a standalone series that happens to have Sea Devils in it and happens to have Unit in it, and I think it's probably the latter. But
whereas he talks a
I
shed
don't
load
mind
during the
that too much.
pre-publicity about the Marvel universe being able to do lots of different things and have spin-offs and such like as
Yeah.
that. But the point with the Marvel universe is while Thor is tonally very different from Captain America, which is tonally very different from Spider-Man, they're still complementary to each other. The trouble with Russell T Davies's shared universes is they're tonally very different and not so complementary to each other.
Yeah, which would be a problem
Sarah
at the
Jane's
point
fine.
at the point where
You
it's
can
so
fit the Doctor in it.
fantastically successful that it reaches its 10th year and they try to bring everything together, then I think that would be awkward. Unfortunately, it hasn't been fantastically successful and it hasn't been
Yes,
very well implemented. But then you review it in terms of a standalone series rather. I think the Whoniverse,
it's
much
not a
like
standalone
much
series though.
much like Universal's Dark Universe, has now been abandoned, and now we're dealing with basically a standalone series rather than a spin-off.
Well, and I think it's fair to point out that it has not been terrifically successful and it hasn't been continued, and it looks like it's coming to a full stop next Christmas. And if it does get picked up, and we all hope it does, and we all expect it to, probably it will start again anew, if not from scratch, but something like it. And this entire period will be seen as something of a dead end for the series. And I think it's entirely reasonable to contextualize this program and this episode as part of that dead end, because this was the very last episode of the Disney Doctor Who thing that 3 years ago looked like a bright new start. And here's that thing that Russell T Davies revealed a few days ago, maybe about 10 days ago, which I thought was very telling about the sort of tone and problems of the series. He said that when he got the job to come back to Doctor Who and do the 14th Doctor thing and then cast the 15th Doctor and the Disney deal and everything else, the first thing he wrote was the episode 1 of The War Between the Land and the Sea. And then, like 18 months later, he hands that script to Pete McTighe and says, "Oh, by the way, I need some more episodes of this. Can you do it?" It's just like, yeah, no, that's not how it works.
Well, it is, because it did.
Yeah,
Well, but did it work? That's the
but
question, because I don't
well,
think it did.
I kind of think the separateness of it, the fact that it's not reconcilable, works in its favor because it doesn't feel like a full stop for an era. It feels like a separate entity of itself. If this had been more tied in with
That's
Doctor Who,
got nothing to do with what I just said, though.
well, it kind of it kind of does, because the writing process has been, as you say, kind of fractured and done weirdly, and it's disconnected from the 14th Doctor, 15th Doctor.
But I think it makes the parts of this story disconnected from the other parts of this story. That one writer comes up with a bunch of ideas and starts putting them down on paper, and then months, if not years later, hands those ideas over to somebody who didn't have those ideas and asks them to tell them to turn that into a story.
Oh,
Which is what you do with co-writers. It's fine.
Well,
It's a
no,
way
with
art's functioned
co-writers.
for years.
and the problem with this,
Well, no, it's not, though, is it?
Isn't that it doesn't
Yeah.
go from A to B to C? It's that it goes very predictably from A to B to C.
Yeah.
So it's not like it suddenly veers off from episode 1 to somewhere completely different in episode 2 and then completely different. It feels like a consistent whole, if nothing else.
I was going to say, we criticised this episode being quite predictable. So
No,
if the
I
ending,
haven't.
if that final
You
episode's
three have.
predictable- Yeah,
I haven't said that.
it is. And
Were
we
you
said,
surprised by it then?
yeah.
Yes,
I
I
do
was
know-
surprised by
oh.
it. I was surprised by the fact that it ended up in all the places that you could predict it would end up, but it didn't tell us the story of how it got there. That was the surprising thing for me, is that it just leapt to the
It did.
ending
It did. What
without
also? So
setting
you're going that
anything
it
up.
did a lot of telling rather than showing.
No, it didn't do showing or telling. It just went there. It just, oh, there's this thing. The Sea Devils are all dead.
Well,
You know,
no,
the Sea Devils being all dead.
There's this thing. Russell Tovey's been infected with it. He's passed it on to the Sea Devils, so he's responsible for it.
But that's it.
And then we
But
see
then-
the dead Sea Devils.
But there's no,
he's
like
owner.
I said, there's
That's
no
the progression.
investigation into that.
Well,
It's a war with no battles, essentially.
yeah.
We don't see a war at all, do we?
No, it's you just get the end of the war. As,
We don't even
as I
see.
say.
We don't even see. We do not at any point even see a dying sea devil as opposed to a dead one. All we get is the absolute final result. We don't get anything of the journey to get us to the final result. I find it hard to believe that all those sea devils, none of the writers, nobody involved in that program said, can't we have one turn up that's not quite dead yet, so that we can at least have an example of how this thing works?
Would they have had to cut scenes for budget? Maybe is that
But also,
I don't know, but you wouldn't tell the film Outbreak without showing.
But
people dying of stuff.
There's a slight power in just seeing the death.
Is
Just
there?
those shots of them floating in the water and being washed up on land. You haven't
That's a
been-
shocking moment.
Yeah.
But then after that, you go to a sequence with one of them that's
Yeah.
not dead yet, because they don't all
Yeah, I
die
don't think
simultaneously.
I don't think you need to do that for me. I think you can see the consequences, and that's enough for your imagination to fill in the gaps that these dead creatures have died in some way.
Yeah, because the more you show, the less the human brain kind of comprehends it. So that scale thing, we try to fit it down through. You have to show it on a small scale. It's an old storytelling thing.
Well, I don't know. It wasn't that small a scale. They showed us rivers and oceans all over the world
But with
with thousands of dead sea
comprehensible
devils in them.
numbers. Yeah, well, they did now.
I mean,
But they didn't eat our dogs, so we
I
won.
just thought there was a power. I there was one of the bits of the episode that I quite liked was the kind of the spectacle, the kind of the shock of just seeing, because obviously you're expecting to see the virus spreading, but actually what you see is the consequences of the virus almost immediately, and then you're told that it's sort of 10%. And maybe because we've been through the pandemic, we're kind of, you know, that's sort of
So it's meant to draw some horror from that, yeah.
yeah.
Did it? I don't know.
Well,
I
I mean,
just it left
I
me
found it
very
powerful.
cold.
Well,
Like
Right.
I've got an in-universe question. I'd like to ask because I'm trying to make my mind up on this. But how do you feel Unit comes out of this looking? Like, does Unit come out of this looking completely ineffective, or like the one sort of good apple and the other was rotten barrel? Because I was trying to sort of put my finger on it. Really, I mean, we see how far Kate Lethbridge Stewart's willing to go, and things like that. But also, is she like, does she come across as quite a
I
weak and ineffectual leader in
I
this?
thought
Because
last week, and I still think it. I think Unit is morally unclear in the series, and probably not in a good way, because I think it's being framed, and I think this is since the 1970s. It's framed as the good side of kind of militarized intervention, and I think they haven't quite reconciled it here, even when they're sort of up against the regular army. I still think there's a kind of Kate Lethbridge Stewart has this kind of, I don't know, this kind of fuzzy role which I
she's
don't quite
kind of
understand.
above the law in a lot of ways, is the
Yeah,
issue.
But
she doesn't
yeah,
do much with it though.
But then again, she's off
But
the rails at the end.
and also Unit's level of power, they never quite make clear, or their influence on the government, they don't quite make clear.
also, but John just said she's off the rails at the end, but I don't think that's true either because you get this whole thing in episodes 3 and 4 about her not getting any sleep and getting closer and closer to like some kind of breakdown. And then the final episode is filled with kind of sequences where they show the passing of time and, her going home and coming back into work and stuff like that.
But
So I think the
there are scenes with a psychiatrist. There's a scene where she yells at the prime minister, so she's clearly not mentally completely stable, I don't think.
yeah, no,
well,
but again, I think it's really woolly about it. I think it shows
Yeah.
sometimes it shows her off
And
the rails and sometimes it shows her just going to work like any other regular person.
yeah, you don't disrespect a therapist. You don't do that. That's a sure sign of ill mental health. That's just not on.
Yeah, no, not entirely sure. But
so JR, about disrespecting therapists.
yeah, well, I've disrespected a therapist enough in this. But there is a kind of a point there, isn't it? Because the bad guys in this are the corporate greed, the ones who want to just get rid of this problem and they
And the
don't care.
politician, yeah, and the politicians. So it's
The,
usual
the cowardly
target.
politicians.
Well, no, it's a grey
Yeah,
area, isn't it? The bad guys are the corporate guys. The politicians are kind of the guys who are caught in the middle because you've got to you've got
See,
to find a solution.
the interesting thing is the Sea Devils have before come in with a threatening act, and they are making more quite unreasonable demands at the start of this episode.
Oh yes.
So I think there is an attempt at least to give this kind of a moral grey areas. If someone came in and threatened you, what would you do? You'd retaliate. You'd find a way to go.
But I
Off you
don't
go,
think
son.
I'm not sure it's even a moral grey area because they don't show the Sea Devils as
Yeah,
in any
there's no.
beneficial
That's
light
what
at
I mean.
all.
There's no heroes here.
They are just
It,
baddies.
I
yeah,
think, but
everybody is
well, I
apart
don't know
from
about.
Unit, possibly.
Apart from Salt, the Sea Devils are just baddies. They just turn up with spears and demands. And yes, their demands are to do with the things that we've done to the planet, but they don't turn up to talk about it.
I think that's where the grey area comes in with the plague and the kind of the visual impact of the plague and the effect on you know the good
It's
humans in here, because we realize that
we're all as
not
bad as
all
each other.
not all solutions are worth doing. The
But yeah, it's a kind of a we're all as bad as each other story. And
um,
going back to the point of, so does that include Unit? Yeah, Unit is supposed to be the good guys who are trying to find a peaceful solution, but actually Unit don't go any way towards finding a peaceful solution. And in the end, you've got Kate Lethbridge-Stewart pointing a gun at a civilian on a beach.
well, also you have got this. The solution exists in the Sea Devil world, which is this accord thing. So the, there is a solution, and it's almost implemented. But the kind of more brutal solution has been implemented first before they can do the ultimate diplomatic solution.
That accord thing is another woolly thing, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
they bring up this idea that there's going to be this thing called Accord, and that Unit can, get the message to the Sea Devils that they want to do this thing called Accord, and it never happens. And when it never happens, you get Russell Tovey saying to what's she called? Salt.
salt.
What's this Accord thing all about then? Oh, it just didn't happen, she says, and that's it. What was the point of
Yeah,
even bringing
she
that
she
up?
explains she explains what it is, doesn't she?
Yeah, but then but
Does she? Does she
sort
do it
of in
well?
a very vague way. But at the same time, they have been told initially that this Accord thing is an absolute imperative for the Sea Devils. And then when they try and do the Accord thing, she just says, "Oh, they ignored it."
No, 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 they
So
didn't
it,
ignore. So that was when the plague hit.
yeah, but they're
So
still
they didn't.
10% alive.
Okay.
But the
Well,
10%,
did
if it's an
Well,
absolute imperative, that 10% should be doing the Accord if that
did
message has been
anyone
sent.
think?
I think the Accord thing might rely on sort of equal an equal balance between the different populations. I think what actually happened was they surrendered rather than doing the Accord thing,
Well,
which
all we've got
which
is
again
speculation on
was,
this, haven't we?
But the point I'm making is not about the specifics of it, but about why it's there in the story, because it never gets made into. I don't think this story ever gets close to showing you how things are supposed to work.
I,
They talk about this Accord thing, but you never actually get to
I
see
don't think
anybody
I don't
implementing it or
I
anything
don't think they
coming of
make
it.
it clear enough what the Accord thing is. I think it's there to demonstrate that there is a diplomatic solution. There is another way,
Yeah, but
as
then you need to
to
see.
quote the Fifth Doctor. But as they're implementing it, then the horrible politicians and ruthless corporations have already initiated their plan without anybody knowing, using the Russell Tovey character as a mule
But
to
that's
get
it.
the plague into the seas. And so that's the brutal RTD ending. And then he kind of lightens it up at the end with a bit of splash, basically.
But you never, but it's never,
Yeah,
nothing about it feels defined and nothing about it feels demonstrated. And so you just come away with these woolly ideas of, well, something called Accord could have happened, but it didn't.
yeah, because you
And
don't have any substance to it, do you? It's just a
yeah,
word, so you don't know what you've lost. Which again comes back to something connected to Babylon 5. There's a an episode called The Coming of Shadows where uh, they're on the verge of peace between these two races, and basically they're so close to it, and you see all the machinations, and you see the dying emperor who's going to issue this apology, and basically stuff goes on behind the scenes that stops the peace happening, and they end up at war. And that in that episode, which won lots of awards, you feel the tragedy because we know what, if you like, Accord
this is what you need to
actually
see.
was.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
need to see
exactly.
Salt going to her people with Accord and being stopped before she gets there by her people dying in front of her, or something like that. You need to see some kind of a journey and some kind of an explanation of what the destination is, but nothing's defined and
I mean,
nothing's demonstrated.
I guess if they could cut down that diving bell episode, they'd have a bit more space for maybe
I think there was
maybe
plenty
more
of
of a
space. They
conclusion.
make weird choices
Is
every
it written
time.
around the cliffhangers, do you think? Is that why it's structured that way?
No, there's a weird structural thing altogether. In this episode, You get this big thing at the start for about 4 minutes of the diplomacy's going to shit and all hell is breaking loose and the Sea Devils are making these demands and you think we're finally going to get into the meat of the story and then it goes off for like 10, 12 minutes. Russell Tovey driving a fucking car through the fucking countryside to the fucking beach. Yeah, okay, that's important, but not at the expense of the story. You've got to have both things. You can't just stop the story and go with Russell Tovey and then pick up the rest of the story after everybody's dead. That's not how you tell stories.
I never thought I'd get sick of. I never thought I'd say the sentence. I was so sick of seeing someone swim into the sea and shout someone's name in the ocean.
I
Oh
mean,
But I
God.
really got.
the only
Yeah,
problem is that that kind of is the story or that's one of the stories Russell T Davies is telling, which is the
Well, yes.
romance between, that's the Romeo and Juliet part. So it's not, he's telling that story quite well because Russell T Davies can't, Russell Tovey can't stay away from the sea, and he's shouting into the sea to try and find his Juliet, and there's an impact to that, and whether that's not your favorite bit of the story.
But the trouble is,
um
she is only in 3 scenes in the entire 53 minutes. And so it's not Romeo and Juliet, it's Romeo and J.
okay.
although she is more intelligent, there are some parallels. She's vastly more intelligent than him. She's more emotionally mature than him to an extent. So there are some. But right, here's a thought. Now I'm probably giving it way too much credit, but does anyone think that possibly some of the stuff that we're decrying out was originally meant to be like a seed for a potential series two, and it got cut off
I
into one
doubt it.
series, and so it runs around? I know. I just thought
Yeah.
because the idea of a chord being a thing that they're pursuing into the next season
I
works a
think I
lot
think
better.
I think a chord was explained, but it was explained
By people telling each other what it
very,
was
very quickly.
rather than
Yeah,
I
us.
also think Russell Tovey, and this might be a bit classist, he needs to speak a bit more clearly, basically.
Oh,
well,
I think
yeah.
the director and the sound editor really shat all over his
I
performance, to
don't
be
think it was a
honest.
sound with for me. It wasn't a sound issue. It was a Russell Tovey performance issue. He's got
Well,
a
that's
sort
why
of
I said
he's
director.
got a sort of mumbly, but that's what he's like everywhere. It's just a problem in big bombastic sci-fi because you've
There
got
was
quick
You,
paced
you get
dialogue and a lot
lost.
of sound around him.
Yeah.
there was one
If
scene
he's in
towards the
Gavin and
end.
Stacey, it's okay.
There was one scene towards the end, and I can't remember what it was, but it was supposed to be a big emotional moment,
Yeah,
and I don't recall the line, but the line reading he gave of that line is probably the worst line reading I've seen in the entire history of Doctor
I
Who,
saw
including the mutants.
I saw a clip of
Wow.
It was
Ian
awful.
McKellen recently, and he's usually a really nice guy, but he was kind of complaining about, I think it was Ian McKellen complaining about certain actors just mumbling lines and not being clear. And I think maybe Russell Tovey falls into this camp for me that
Yeah, probably,
just
and it's the
just not suited.
director's job to get him to not do it. That is the director's, that is top of the director's list. Get
Yeah.
performances out of the actors. That's the number one thing a director's supposed to be in charge of. And, it didn't happen, did
I
it?
think it might just be his acting. I mean, it's just what he's like everywhere. It's
And
more
it's
acceptable in
not an
something.
uncommon style either.
No, no.
But it just makes you
No.
wonder whether he was miscast as well then, because I don't think there was any chemistry at all between him and Salt. And the fact that they've only got 3 scenes in that entire episode didn't help at all.
Do you think there was material cut or the script was cut for time or something? It wasn't.
I don't
It's a
know.
nice,
I get the feeling
nice
they
thought.
didn't. I get the
But
feeling they didn't film it. I get the feeling they didn't write enough.
yeah, there's
Torchwood, Children of Earth was 5 60-minute episodes. This could have been 5 60-minute. I think this would have worked so much better with 5 60-minute episodes because they could have fleshed out some of the stuff that became really superficial.
we could have
Because
had
they,
another 15 minutes in the diving bell.
but if you'd have had 15
Ah,
minutes in the diving bell, you could have told a story in there rather than just having people kind of, one person's pretending to be flaking out, and that's all you get for 15 minutes.
yeah, that just I know I wasn't here for the diving bell one, but did anyone else, I mean, you may have said this, but did anyone else find it
Have you not
from
watched our
a
review?
What I
Unbelievable.
no, I was gonna binge watch them all. Sorry, but I just thought it was bum achingly obvious that that South African guy was going to turn out to be a villain.
Well, because
It
he's South
just
African for a start.
well, so one, I did think I've never met a nice South African. I had that song in my head totally, but he was so cloyingly friendly and upbeat that it just seemed like, oh, you're trying to set expectations because blah 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 and the accent and all that jazz. So it's so obviously he was going to turn out to be something dastardly. And
Also,
when it was, I was,
he had that really weird character shift, didn't he? Before they get in the diving bell, he is the most bullish. As soon as they get
yeah,
into the diving bell, he is the most timid. And you think,
yeah.
did they give his lines to the wrong person?
I was thinking, is the actor? No, hang on, I've got to make sure I phrase this correctly. Is the actor, the character acting really badly to try and deflect from the fact that actually he's there to do the bomb thing?
Yes.
Or is the actor playing the character acting badly at acting badly? Fairly
Well,
sure I got the right layers there.
I, d-
But
yeah, I was I was kind of fine with it because there's an accepted path from bombastic, like putting a mask on, to reality check as you're going actually down in the diving bell.
there
Then
is.
you fall
yeah,
apart,
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
that's compounded. I didn't think that was suspicious. I felt that was a normal character progression. But when he does set off the bomb, then you kind of retool what you've seen and you realize there's an extra layer of he knows that he's got this thing to do at the bottom of the trench. And so that explains why he's wearing a mask to start with and
But it
why the
didn't.
sort of fracturing as he's going down kind of made even more sense to me.
You're right. That's a perfectly natural character progression that you'd put in a story. But it didn't. But two things. It didn't feel like a progression. It just felt like a switch.
Yeah,
And it didn't feel like the story made any effort to tell us it was a progression or to allow us to
consider
come
it.
to the
Yeah,
conclusion that it was a progression. It just, the story seemed happy for us to think it was a switch. I don't
especially
know.
as it threw a lot of his training out the window. They knew they were going down in a diving bell, and all of his complaints and nervousness. Yeah, okay, you can still have a nervous reaction when you face with the reality of it, but it was almost like he suddenly thought, "Oh, I'm in a diving bell. I didn't know this kind of thing could happen,"
I
which
didn't
was,
read page 6 of the manual. It doesn't make any sense when you've just had
yeah,
intensive physical training. You didn't
yeah.
sit down to read the manual. You were being told it by people who were training you. So I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah.
Just again, it
Also,
just was like somebody sat down to write this and didn't really think that much about what they were writing. They just wanted to put things in, to have things in there, but they didn't think about how they'd fit them together.
plus, is it a bit on the nose to have a white South African's last act in life be an inherently racist one? Bit on the nose, isn't it, Russell Davis? I mean, come on.
Well, you can blame Pete McTighe for that one.
No,
I mean, it might have been a perfectly pertinent political point, but yeah. But again, the program didn't tell us it was a political point. Sometimes,
It was
sometimes this thing
show not
work.
tell.
Well, no, that's it. It didn't show us that it was a. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes these things work, and you can see all the parts in motion, and you can see why all the parts are there, how all the parts fit together, why those particular parts have been chosen, and what those parts are supposed to be reflecting about the world outside. Lucky Day was a great example of that. That had all of that, and you could see exactly what it was about, and it didn't need to spell it out because it put it in on the screen coherently so that you could work it out for yourself. I just felt the whole thing about this, everything was so woolly and nothing, there seems to be no definition about any of it. So that anything that might have been a deliberate choice to make a point, you couldn't feel the deliberation of the point. You had to sort of just say, well, it could mean this. Maybe it's an accident.
you got to do a lot of work.
None of it felt deliberate.
I would say some of it didn't feel deliberate, and there were flaws, and there were, as John says, it felt like things were cut out, even if they weren't cut out. I don't think it's fair to say nothing felt deliberate. I
Well,
think there
no,
was
okay.
there was power to certain aspects of it, to certain scenes. There were interesting moral dilemmas thrown up. There were interesting conclusions to it, and there were moments that worked really well. So, but there were also, as with a lot of Doctor Who, I think there was a lot that was sort of underexplained or glossed over, or lost in the edit, or lost in Russell Tovey's delivery.
I
That
think for me, though, all those moments that would have worked really well, I just think because I was so undersold on the characters and the truth of the situation, I just don't think any of those parts hit home with me, really.
Less than some of its
But
parts.
yeah, yeah. But to go back to what we said on both of the last episodes, I was still engaged with it. I didn't struggle to watch it. I wasn't angry at the screen. I was just, you know, nonplussed, really, I suppose, by the execution of it and by the sort of final result. So I don't think it was like the worst thing I've ever seen, but I just think there was so much promise there and it failed to live up to all of that
I think
promise.
I think also stepping back without my Doctor Who hat on, I still think it's fairly amazing that a series like this ends up on ends up on television.
Well, in some ways, yeah.
And I mean, it's not a crime drama. It's not, it's not a cozy mystery. It is an unusual thing to see on television at the moment. Sci-fi and sci-fi on a global scale. I appreciate that. But I appreciate that when Doctor Who is on because Doctor Who's unlike anything, even with comparisons with Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine and Enterprise, it's still unlike anything else that's on television. It's still so weird to see it. It's become the norm.
Yeah, yes, probably to an extent, but we are sort of living in a post Marvel, post Disney, post everything else universe, aren't we? Where some of the biggest programs around are Percy Jackson and Lemony Snicket and things like that. I think I think if anything, maybe it sits rather oddly with those because because those I see this is maybe the thing. Those things commit to being for people who like those things. And so those things know absolutely what they are. They know absolutely who they're for. Stranger Things knows absolutely who it's for, what it is, and it just commits to doing that thing. And actually, it gets a massive audience because anybody who's remotely interested in that thing is going to enjoy that thing. So Stranger Things is huge. I think this, I think it doesn't commit. I think it kind of wants to put these things on the screen, but it also still wants to pretend that it's not that interested in being about these things. It's a bit like Russell T Davies has still got his head in 2004.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I
Mm.
mean, that's the problem. It's amazing it's on television, but it's also feels somehow dated.
Yeah, it still
And
does, doesn't it?
and I don't think I think Russell T Davis's time has passed a little bit, and I think he's more approaching the sort of mentoring producer
Yeah, yeah.
period of his
I
life
think
rather than he's not
mm,
creating kind of cutting edge queer as folk
that
rebooting Doctor Who anymore. He's
that
sort of
was the
aged
long
out.
term plan with this, wasn't it? Because he said he was going to hand on to someone afterwards.
I mean,
Try and
it might still be the case. I mean,
Well, we'll have to wait and see if Bad Wolf is still involved after the
yeah,
Rose Tyler special or whatever it is, the Billy Piper special, if indeed Billy Piper's in it. Because Billy Piper's, going to have her hands full with Wednesday. So whether she's free or not, I suppose you can arrange to record things around people's schedules, can't you? So if they want Billy
yeah.
Piper, I'm sure they can get her.
yeah.
Um, yeah. The interesting thing about Russell T Davis is his politics are aligned with what the politics of today are. I think if this program could successfully get an idea of those politics across, like Series 1 and Series 2, they both had lots of really interesting politics, but they often went so black and white with it that, you know, I always say this, don't I? You can't persuade somebody of your argument if you're beating them over the head with it. So you're just going to end up preaching to the already converted. Nobody nobody who's about to vote for reform is going to think twice about it from having watched, Russell T Davis's version of Doctor Who Part 2. because it's just beating you over the head with an idea that you either agree with or you don't, but it's not persuading you to think about things in any different kind of a way. So I think his politics are in the right place, but I think he's just lost the ability to turn that into a conversation on the screen.
Maybe that's kind of where it falls down, is that Russell T Davies's politics are more straight lines. Malcolm Holt, obviously the creator of the Sea Devils originally, was always more about the grey areas of things.
Mm.
Even when he had the mastering, for a starter, when he does the ecology movement in Invasion of Dinosaurs, it's the dark side of that he does. At the end, he questions Unit in his first Unit story. He's
Yeah.
after that kind of difficult questions, and I think they do want to ask difficult questions,
But you've actually got to pose the question,
execution,
right?
the execution of Russell T Davies isn't subtle about his politics in any kind of way, and I think that's where maybe that execution falls down.
Yeah,
And I think
because
Pete McTighe can get muddled with the politics too.
because in RTD1, it wasn't so much that he was subtle about how he put the politics in, but it was that he put less of it in. So it felt more subtle when it did turn up because there wasn't that much of it. If you throw a lot more in and you're not subtle about it, it becomes overwhelming, doesn't it?
It's also a case that there's more politics today.
Well,
There's just
that's true
more
too.
of it.
Yeah. Yes,
Well,
because
there's
RTD1, oh, just to finish Matt's point, RTD1 almost exclusively took place before the crash in 2008, didn't it? And that's when a lot of the sort of really interesting and darker things today basically kicked off, isn't it? Ryan, sorry, go on.
all I was going to say was one of the things that I think underscores this that I think may have passed us by is in all, as far as I'm aware, in most of the other appearances of the Silurians at Homo or whatever, there are factions within each side. You've got humans who are saying let's cooperate, humans who say let's fight. The Silurians, let's go to war. No, let's not go to war. In this, everyone is this homogenized blob.
Oh, really?
Apart,
Salt,
apart from a
yeah.
couple.
I thought there
Well,
were.
if we're not
There were.
including individuals, the 99.9% of the Silurians are like demands and war. All the corporations are let's not make peace, let's kill them and take their stuff. Same thing with the military. I'm just saying we don't get anything on the Silurian side that suggests any depth or dimensionality to them.
So
You've got Salt, who's barely in it comparatively.
And she's a different species.
Yeah, and everybody else in it is everyone. All the other Silurians, all we get from them is follow our demands to the letter. We're not going to help you. We're going to dump all the trash on you. We're going to go to war. We're going to wipe you out unless.
So my impression was that the whole point of what they were doing is they're setting up the two races as a mirror image of one another. You even see that in the promotion, right? You get Russell Tovey, Gugu, and Barber Raw. They're mirror imaged. And so we don't see a lot of the Sea Devil culture or spend a lot of time with the Sea Devils under the sea, presumably for budgetary reasons, but also for length reasons. So what you construe is there are factions and human side, there are governments that are antagonistic, and there are leaders that are taking extreme solutions. So you assume that that is mirrored in the Sea Devil side, but we don't see it, but we hear of it in fragments of dialogue. I'm kind of fine with that because we're telling the story from the human's point of view, but I get the impression that that's the intention, that there are these factions, but we only see the extremists because the extremists turn up in the debating chamber opposite the other extremists,
And I
and then
wonder,
Sol turns up opposite her equivalent.
but maybe the problem then is making Salt and Tide a different species. So they make it fairly clear that three different species turn up in that meeting room, don't they? The fish things,
Homo
and then
amphibian.
Homo amphibia, Homo aqua,
Yeah,
and whatever the fish.
yeah,
They come up with a name for the fish, don't they? So there's three different species, aren't there?
yeah,
The fish, the sea devils, and salt and tide are three
yeah.
different
So you get
species.
the impression there's a kind of a caste system, which
But
is
it's not a caste system if they're different
well,
species, is it? This is like
Either
a
way,
And
this
the
is
fish there just set of
if
that
there's
dog thing in the last episode.
sorry,
And
John.
the fish in the tank Are they just there to set up that dog thing in the last episode?
Who knows? There's that
Mm.
shot as well, which looks like something out of Jaws, isn't there, where somebody's caught one. But the point I was going to make by making them different species is, yeah, to Ryan's point, that means that the sea devils, that species, the species in the middle, become this homogenized mass. We never even get one of the species, the sea devils, talking, do we?
No, I know. And again, there's no nuance to it. The way they've done it like that. If this is this, like you said, is it not meant to be about degree shades of grey and how different people have different opinions and are reacting, and instead we get this homogenized like clump of politics, you know,
It just, yeah.
them making these demands. Yeah, and surely the grey area is where the interest is in something like this, because if I mean, again, I know we've done this to death a little bit, the Babylon 5 thing. But if one species is purely evil in it, well, there's no sympathy there. There's nothing to get hold of. There's no tragedy. There's no fall from grace if you're presented as do what we say or we are going to war and we're going to kill you all. Where's the debate in that? Where's the sympathy in that? I don't care if we do have this like existential displacement, where they're like strangers in their own world. The fact is, the way they're acting is this one overwhelming presiding force
And
that
I
you
tell
can't
you,
debate with. They made it clear.
I think it's quite smartly playing on sort of otherness that we don't get to see the Sea Devil's point of view. So we spend a lot of the time, and I felt this with this third and fourth episode. Actually, I can see the humans' point of view. The Sea Devils are assholes. We should like do everything we can to sort of stop them. And it builds with this kind of invisible enemy, so to coin a phrase, under the water. And you see sort of fragments and little like glimpses at nuance and a sort of leadership structure and caste system, but you don't see it all. You just see the humans. And so when the humans do their final plague solution, the impact of that heightens the impact of that, because actually you think actually the humans have gone too far. There are limits. The ends don't justify the means. And actually the Sea Devils are, they're a culture, and they've surrendered, which they're not fighting to the end. They've surrendered. There's sympathy to them, and it made that moment more powerful. The fact that we hadn't seen a lot of their internal machinations or their internal power struggles or their debates. It
Doesn't that just
worked
make them
for me.
faceless though?
Sorry,
yeah,
but
just
that's the otherness thing, isn't it? And then
Yeah,
suddenly
but they're
suddenly
already.
they're not faceless because they surrender. You see the vulnerability right at the end, and I think that's a
Well,
powerful
yeah,
moment.
we get that because that's like as Freud said, that's melancholia. It's not mourning because they never say we've lost. They only say you took from us, and it's violence with grief. Violence is like grief with no way to be spoken because their identity is fused with this lost world. So they stay angry. So they leave angry. So they're not mourning. Like I said, it's this loss is internalized rage, the collapse of their identity, and it's fixated in blame on the humans. So
you,
it was a good setup for a future.
you also get
Sorry.
like weird things like Salt. She gets banished from her species, and then at the end, she's the one who surrenders on their behalf.
Yeah, I never understood that bit. I was hoping someone else could explain what I'd missed. I
Maybe
thought I'd missed
maybe
something.
it's the fall apart in Sea Devil Society.
Yeah.
Maybe, John.
You
I
can't.
mean,
You haven't got room for this exile stuff if you've got 90% of your species gone, whatever it is.
yeah, but how does
I mean,
she
I don't
get
mind
back
Ambi.
in? It's like it
Yeah,
doesn't. If she's
Again, it's
banished,
kind of Russell Hughes' cartoon politics, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
well, that's it. Because I don't mind ambiguity. I'm all for ambiguity if it's something that makes you think. But this just read to me like they hadn't thought it through and they just hadn't put in the depth,
Yeah,
as
because Russell
opposed to
T
like,
Davis doesn't deal in ambiguity, generally speaking.
uh,
He prefers to, you know, he prefers to draw things in big, broad brushstrokes. So something like that, when everything else is in a big, broad brushstroke, something like that feels like an error rather than a deliberate choice. Because she
and
didn't have to be
laziness as
banished.
well.
And and here's another thing about her character as well. Or so this is just another kind of weird thing that didn't kind of sit right with me. Is like she goes off at the end of episode 3 or whatever it is with Russell Tovey, and then you don't get many scenes in this last episode between the two of them, but they have quite a lot of scenes together in episode 4. But they have just been the figureheads for this huge thing that could either be a detente or it could be war between two species. And the politics of it is huge. It's extinction level stuff. One or other or both of those species could become extinct because of this. And they go off and have a love affair and they barely ever mention it. They barely ever talk about the fact that the two of them were on opposite sides. It would be like Romeo and Juliet if you never heard either of them saying anything about the families that they come from. They never seem to talk about the families that they come from and the position that they were in. And just to me, a character drama, that kind of stuff would be at the forefront of their minds. And those characters wouldn't be able to avoid that conversation. And that should be a tension between them. Can
Do
they
do
continue
Romeo and
this love
Juliet
affair?
talk about their families that much?
Sorry?
Do Romeo and Juliet talk about their families that
Yeah.
much in the play? Or is it the
In
question
the
that their
Well,
relationship is sort
yeah,
of
but you get to see them with
completely
their
eclipsed?
families a lot,
You
don't
see
you?
them, yes.
Yes,
You
yes.
have to have the background. It's the essential thing.
There's
Yeah.
no
yeah,
background
Detail.
here. Salt is separate from the rest of the Sea Devils, and when she goes off with him, there's barely any talk whatsoever of where she's come from, what it's all about, what the situation is. It just felt like if you are involved, if you are right at the forefront of something as massive as this, that should be a cause of conversation and tension in the story, and it never is. They just kind of swim off.
I wonder if it's a I wonder if it's done with the mirroring thing again, because we assume that the Russell Tovey character is basically going through the same thing that the Salt character is going through. So when he's vilified by the press and by the public, and they have to drive him through crowds of angry civilians, and he's still involved in the the negotiations and with unit. And it just feels like they're setting up. They're saying basically what happens above land is happening below the sea at the same time. Not an exact parallel, but the equivalent sort of power struggles and complications.
I
But
don't know. You
obviously, they
say
don't.
they're saying that, but I don't think they ever actually
I think
do.
they're suggesting that. I think they've set up a kind of a mirror situation between the two species, but on purpose. I think we don't get to see what happens beneath the seas because it's building up towards it's playing with the idea of these are Doctor Who monsters, these are the heroes, and actually it sort of flips it,
Oh, speaking of
which
heroes,
is what Hulk does. I mean, this is what what this is the tradition, is the whole point of the Silurians and the Sea Devils
but
is
Hulk does give you
they're
both sides, doesn't
they're
he?
presented as others.
But apart from in that
Not
one story, that's
not
the only
really. If you think
example where he
about
doesn't.
If you think about Silurians, not really. You see a few scenes of the arguments between the Silurians, but mostly it's set above ground, and you see the consequences of what the Silurians are doing.
You also, but in that story, you also get the interactions between the Silurians and the humans at the start of it as
The young
well.
scientist, the old scientist. You have to have it to have
But
that
and also
ending to
Fulton
have the
Mackay's
weight.
character, so you get to see what the Silurians are up to. So there is a lot more in there than I think you'd think there is. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't go as far. And the Sea Devils definitely doesn't because the Sea Devils is the oddest Malcolm Hulk story, isn't it? Where he just makes the monster second fiddle to the master. Mind you, even then, one of the Sea Devils gets to talk, which is more than happens here,
Well, they talk, they just don't talk in English. They have their own language that's then
I
translated.
suppose. But then again, that just makes you ask the question,
So
well, who and what are Tide and Salt?
they're Homo amphibia. They're sea devils that have very rapidly evolved to operate outside of the seas as well as under the seas. that kind of makes sense to me. I mean, we've already seen Silurians and sea devils are related species but different, so it makes sense that there'd be a sort of variety of different hidden species that have hibernated.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
Yeah.
I just don't buy what those two are at all.
It did seem like the Silurians had no inner monologue here at all as a species. There was no debate within their ranks because we don't get to know any of their ranks. We get to talk to like one and a half figureheads who are this monolithic presence. Whereas at least among the humans, we get Russell Tovey talking to his family. We've got Kate Lethbridge talking to the governments and the corporations, trying to say, "Look, stop doing this." And we've got the secret meetings with the Silurians. We get absolutely nothing.
I
So
think that's the
there's
point. That's a
well,
genuine. I think it's a
but again,
genuine.
does that
It's
not
not a
take
flaw.
away from?
It's a decision to build up to effectively a twist at the end, because
But
lots of
what's
the
the twist
people
that they're not all that evil, or what?
lots of people watching this won't have seen the Silurians or the Sea Devils. They won't know that there's going to be a moral dilemma. They'll just think this is Godzilla versus humans. This is monsters versus humans, and actually, it it's it, it
So they're
kind of
expecting the Sea
it kind
Devils
of
to get wiped
fools
out by the
it kind
humans.
of fools you into thinking that is the case by not showing you the nuance. But then the twist at the end is there's an emotional impact to hearing that the Silurians have only 10% left of them, and then you think, oh, actually,
Is
maybe
there
we're the
though?
monsters after
Yeah, I
all.
didn't feel any emotional impact to
I
that.
Well,
mean, yeah, because
that's
it
because
just
you were
ends up being like
worried about Unit Tower all the way through.
that's. But that
Not
means it
really.
turns into like that means it almost turns into War of the Worlds, except with a deliberate edge, because it's like if you have this faceless force that is threatening extinction of your species, and then they get sick and die off themselves instead, you're more likely to go hurrah rather than feel a more ambiguity towards it, like, oh, are we the bad guys? Because one, Rusty Davies absolutely isolates the corporations as being this separate evil thing, in which case my reaction was, I already know corporations are evil scumbags who ruin the planet. That's not anything new. And the difference is this time they're screwing things up for
Yeah,
a species that's threatened to destroy us, as opposed to the human race.
but
So,
that,
whilst I'm
but
not
that,
saying hurrah for the corporations, it doesn't really give any depth. It just shot,
I
just
don't,
decides.
I don't think, I think it would be unusual to get to the end of this final episode and think, hurrah, 90% of the Sea Devils were wiped out. The way it's framed, I think it's definitely framed as being a bad thing, even to the
Yes, I
point
don't
where the
disagree with
people
that.
plotting it have
It,
their
it
kind
it's
of
a
an
disproportionate
interesting
response.
comeuppance.
It might be framed as that, but they don't sell it.
Well, that's
Yeah, I don't
subjective.
find
That's
it.
subjective.
That's circle back, isn't it? There.
I thought it did sell it. I thought it was one of the stronger moments of the final episode.
I see. The
Maybe.
thing is, I just as a thought exercise, is that because of this show, or is that because you have all the sort of like emotional baggage of previous
Warriors of the
appearances of the
Deep.
Sea Devil? And
Um,
yeah, I mean, let's not forget. Oh, I'm going to forget the creature's name
Legend of
now.
the Sea
What was the
Devils.
really
no,
terrible
no.
creature
I
in
think
The
it
Warriors of
lurker.
the
Lurker.
Deep?
it
No,
worked.
the Lurker. Thank you. Yes.
It worked for me because there were people who we were obviously supposed to be on the side of, like Kate Lethbridge Stewart, the Russell Tovey character.
Where are we supposed to be on the side of Kate Lethbridge Stewart with her mental breakdowns and her weird decisions and her pulling a gun on a civilian?
Well,
And
we obviously
How
were.
she treated the
she's
therapist.
meant to be a sympathetic character.
Yes,
Whether you agree with her actions is a
no,
different matter
but we're
entirely.
supposed
And
to
I think
be
that's part of the
on
point.
we're supposed to be on Russell Tovey's side. We're supposed to be on she's on the side of the
Yeah.
good guys, if there are good guys. And their reactions to the conclusion was what sold the moment to me, basically. So
That felt a bit like though we're being told.
we're shown rather than told
Do you really
the
think that?
power of
Okay.
the end. Yeah, because I
I
think
could,
Russell Tovey, even though I couldn't understand what he was saying, I thought his sort of emotions at the end were quite effective. And I
well,
thought Kate,
yeah.
I don't
and then
remember any, to be honest.
well, again, you were probably distracted by, you know,
By
I
not the
wasn't
lack of
thinking
unit
about
tower.
the unit
everything
tower,
else.
Matt, till I started
Everything
this
else.
call
But
tonight.
probably still wound up about the wheelchair ramp and the TARDIS.
So, Ryan, what do you think of the Freudian
Yeah.
symbolism of JR thinking constantly about this unit tower?
Well,
And
I
a
mean,
wheelchair
I
ramp.
think
Yeah.
What does the
so.
wheelchair
Well,
ramp symbolize?
Your impending old age
I
and
think it's
declining abilities.
existentially, it's what we refer to as the tragedy of irreversibility. It's this idea that some losses can't be repaired, only responded to. So, so no treaty or technology or apology can undo, let's say, evolutionary displacement. Okay, and as a reflection of this episode, it's quietly rejecting the fantasy that everything broken can be fixed. Usually Doctor Who offers hope through like reversal, but here the hope we have is a much smaller one. Okay, as represented by the desire for I nearly said the Avengers Tower there. The hope for Unit Tower. It's a smaller. JR's pain is a smaller, quieter, more internalized pain here. I think, and it's important to understand that this is also a reflection of our own sort of like en masse intergenerational trauma. We've got the Sea Devils of old, Doctor Who of old, colliding with the Doctor Who of the new. You know, this trauma transmitted across generations through memory and narrative.
Plus,
So yeah,
JR struggles to get it up sometimes as well.
JR never gets the opportunity. What are you talking about?
Should we score it?
I was going to score it. Do you want to score it now? Are you saying you need the toilet? Give it a score then.
No, but Taskmaster is on.
Well,
I've
you've
still
got
got Only
iPlayer,
Connect
haven't
to
you?
watch.
Fine, I'm recording it.
Oh, is it Taskmaster on 4, isn't it?
Yeah. Champion of champions.
So you can't
so
watch it on
we've gone
iPlayer.
from Freud to Taskmaster. Dear oh dear. This is what Heidegger would have called Unheimlichkeit, which is not being at home in the world.
Don't explain it. Let it stand.
The uncanny.
Yes. Yeah.
The Heimlichkeit maneuver. Is that a thing?
The Unheimlich maneuver.
The Unheimlichkeit maneuver. Yeah, it is.
No, that
It is.
joke
That's
doesn't
what this
work.
story is about.
Right, Ryan, give it a score out of 10.
Right. Are we sorry? Just to be clear, is this for the whole series or for
For
just
the
this last
whole
episode?
series. It's one story. We score stories on this podcast. Unless we
Okay.
don't. So we're scoring the story.
I am gonna have to give it a 5. It is bang in the middle for me. I didn't hate it. I didn't dislike it. There are bits I liked, but overall, very humdrum, very straight down the middle for me. 5.
John.
I think it's a 7. I like the ideas. I like a lot of performances. I like where they were trying to go, but that execution, it's just a bit muddled to say. They were kind of the ligaments of the story were a bit fractured, I think, for me. So yeah, 7.
Can you
I'm
fracture a
going...
ligament? Sorry, just wondered. Can you fracture a ligament?
Well, okay, they were torn. I think you can tear them. I've done it in the past.
I'm going 6 because it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. I just didn't think the execution was up to much. And I can't wait for the Blu-ray to come out because the high definition version on iPlayer was fuzzy as fuck.
Oh, okay. I did wonder where you were going with that.
Yeah, it just looked horrible, I think. Matt.
I'm going for a 7. I thought I thought it had some moral complexity. I thought it looked really good. I just think RTD's past it now, and he should produce rather than. I don't. I think he's lost his power as a kind of a script writing presence.
Right.
We're back to the tragedy of irreversibility there.
Well, we'll be back to the tragedy of irreversibility with some reversibility next Christmas, because the next time we do review of new Doctor Who will be in approximately 12 months' time when we talk about Billy Piper coming back, probably. And who knows? I think Billy Piper as the Doctor with David Tennant as their companion. That works for me. Until that happens, and it surely will. I was JR.
I was John.
I was Matt.
I was Ryan.
And we will speak again soon. Congratulations on hosting your first episode, Ryan. Good job.